Welcome everyone to episode 172 of the JSB GamesCast. I'm your host Rob, aka Zen. Joining me today are my favorite people in the world, recording everything and make sure the ship doesn't crash. Ryan, how are you?
I'm back. I'm alive.
You're alive.
Yeah.
Thank God. Everything was awful when you were gone. I was scared to push buttons. It was a very trying time.
Yeah. It gets, there's some times where my work, it's gets pretty busy and stuff like that, especially with the tournament series coming through and stuff. But made it through it. Don't have to worry about another tournament series till August now. So, so we're good. We're making things happen. Trying to anyway. Allegedly, sort of, maybe.
Allegedly, sort of, maybe.
Yeah.
Allegedly joining us today, but he might be too tired, so mentally he might be checked out. I'm not sure, but let's see. Drew, how are you?
Hiya Papaya, it's Drew.
Hiya Papaya. Shout outs to the best girl in Fire Emblem Engage.
Is that what I just came back to?
That's Hiya Papaya.
Okay. Sure.
There's usually a lot more pep behind that, but this is lo-fi Drew.
Lo-fi Drew. Oh God.
Lo-fi Hiya Papaya Drew. I like that. I think that's the podcast title. Yeah. So this is gonna be a pretty chill episode, right? Like Drew said, lo-fi. Like I'm kind of on low energy.
Is
Ryan,
it? Is it?
I might be coming in with a hot take.
So let me be real for a second. Here's what I figured was about to happen, all right? Because I am on lo-fi mode, but I know you two have been talking about Resident Evil 4, and there are some takes to be had apparently with you two.
Yes. Yes.
So
there are.
So I figured I would probably end up doing nothing this episode, and you guys are probably just going to go ham on Resident Evil 4. But before I release the hounds, some quick housekeeping notes. We did record the JSB Anime Cast earlier today, so that will be up this week as you are hearing this. This episode, we focused on an anime called Kageki Shoujo. If you guys have heard of that or are interested in theater actors and the drama that comes with that, I highly recommend.
Am I going to cry?
I did not cry. Asher cried.
Okay. Right,
so I don't know where you will fall in the mix, honestly.
0 Zen tears out of 10.
0 Zen tears out of 10. But if you want to,
did you not crying make Asher cry?
You have to tune in. You have to tune into the episode to find out.
Okay.
So,
all right.
In
These
other
are
words,
the questions that need answering.
In other words, don't spoil the episode.
Try not to spoil the episode. Did I enjoy it? I don't know. You got to go listen to it, but make sure you watch the anime first because obviously spoilers abound. So definitely check that out. Other than that, let's hop right into it. I'm probably gonna, take a nap while you guys talk about some Resident Evil. Drew, you're up first.
All right. So I'm here. Been playing some video games this week. I went hardcore on RE4 just to make sure that it was done for this recording because I knew Ryan was coming back. And I wanted to make sure that was done. So I definitely went pretty hard last week and was doing multiple chapters a day. I went from chapter 9 to beating the game in 2 days.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It took me 3 days to beat it, but yeah, I get.
Yeah, I had kind of fallen off a bit because my initial impressions were yeah, it's Resident Evil. If you had heard the what I had said on the episode that you weren't here, Ryan, where I was playing through it, I'm like, yeah, it's Resident Evil 4. It's about what you would expect from Resident Evil 4, and I think ultimately by the time I finished it, so here's where I'm at. I think that game mechanically is a huge improvement over the original. Like everything that they sort of did in terms of improving the gameplay of Resident Evil 4, I think they did a really, really good job.
100%
all
agree.
of that was fantastic.
100% agree.
As far as like the narrative turns, though, can't say I was a big fan.
As far as the story, or as far as like
well, like the story's still like basically generally the same, right?
Sure.
But like
there were a few changes that they did make. We're not going to go into spoilers, but there were some like different things they did. They changed around in some key points.
And like there were things about it that I didn't care for. Specifically, like Sadler is less involved, which I really didn't care for. Leon doesn't really interact with Sadler, and Sadler's like the big bad of RE4, right?
You're right.
For anybody who's played the original, like there's a lot of back and forth between Leon and Sadler, and like that's part of like the corny greatness of like RE4, whereas like they don't really like posit Leon versus Sadler here until like almost near the end of the game.
Right.
And I'm just like, this feels like very inorganic.
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't feel right. And like I didn't like that. And like because they introduced Sadler so late, like that changes like certain happenings that happen. Like the same happenings basically happen from the original to the remake, but like they have like the way they happen is different. Specifically, events involving Louis Serra, and like I don't know, just having Sadler like so far removed from the plot, I just didn't care for. Their reimagining of Krauser, I also wasn't a big fan. And like, let me clarify that. The way they redid the Krauser fights, excellent, 10 out of 10.
Yes,
fantastic.
Agree.
Love that.
To me, that might have been the best part of the game, to be honest. With the way they redid the Krauser fights.
Yes, but Krauser as a character, nah, fam, I'm not about it. Not about it at all.
So,
I was not a fan of how they did it.
So, part of the reason why they did that was to elaborate more on like his story and the tragedy that happened with him with a certain mission that took place. I can't remember the mission itself or what it was called or what that story arc was called off the top of my head, but like they wanted to expand more on that, and that's why they kind of introduced that aspect when Leon was like being trained by Krauser in the opening credits and everything. So that's why there was more references towards that and everything. Between
that part's fine.
Yeah, between the two though, I do agree with you. I think OG Krauser, it was a much more menacing individual, but I still liked this Krauser though. I still liked him as a character, but I am in agreement with you.
The biggest issue is that he works for the Granados and not for Wesker.
So it's kind of weird how they kind of portrayed that, right? Because I still have the feeling that he was still kind of being more like a double agent type in some regard. But yeah, they made it to where like, cause he basically, so like the reason why that was portrayed more and everything was to express more of the tragedy that he went through with his story arc and everything. But I still feel like there was the feeling that like he gained that power because he was going to basically eventually turn on him. And then, do whatever he could with, the whole Wesker side of things and everything. But, like, it's still kind of, like, interesting how they kind of portrayed all that and everything. Because, yeah, they did make it seem like more so that he was more involved with being a pawn of Sadler in a sense. But I still think that there's some part of it where he was, like, he was using that for his own gains to do what he wanted to do.
Sure. And I get that, but I don't know, like something about it just didn't. I was like, this just doesn't feel as good.
Right.
And that could just be my nostalgia kicking in. I don't know.
I think there is a little bit of that, but that's still like a reasonable feeling to have, especially if you spent as much time with RE4 before the remake even came about. Like, if you constantly grinded that game and everything and know that whole storyline, the ins and outs of it and everything, stuff like that, it's definitely an understandable feeling, which I definitely understand for sure.
But like outside of that, like gameplay wise, like the set pieces are fantastic. The new boss fights are really cool. Like I like the new boss fight that they did for Ramon Salazar. Although like
I hated that boss fight so much.
That's probably the hardest boss fight in the game.
Yes, yes. To me, almost
which
unnecessarily.
I found very disappointing that Sadler was so easy, but.
The Sadler boss fight was by far the worst boss fight of all the Resident Evils. To me, like it was.
You mean Ramon's?
No. Like as far as Sadler goes, like the final boss fight with Sadler, that fight was like it was so anticlimactic to me. Like it was very uneventful.
It was.
That's why I was like,
it's very easy.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, this is the worst like made boss fight ever, because it was just like there was nothing really to it. You knew what to do. It was plain as day.
Yeah,
How you
felt like
approach
a Zelda
it.
boss almost.
Right? Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was not
like
not
attack
great.
the glowing eyeball, please.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I don't remember the boss fight from the original game, but I feel like it was
pretty identical. Pretty identical.
Oh, was it?
Pretty identical. Yeah, you shoot the eyeballs and you debilitate that way, damage it enough, and you get the rocket launcher, and then that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty identical. The only difference was they tried to add like enemies in that fight too. Like try to overload like the environment with just hordes of enemies coming at you while you're fighting Sadler. Which to me, I felt like was kind of like a lazy effort to make that fight something. Like that's your way to make it different, is just by adding enemies. I wasn't really a big fan of that aspect. So, I'm definitely on agreement with you on everything. The Salazar fight I despised with every being in my body. And it wasn't because, like, they, in the original, he was a stationary boss. It was easy and everything, so like that, which I get you wanted to make that fight a little more different and interesting. So, like, I get the premise of it and everything. And also, this might be because of the fact, like, I was playing this boss fight at 3 a.m. on fumes and everything. But, like, I absolutely despised everything that took place of the fight, where he just ran around the entire time. You had to wait for him to throw out an acid attack, and then when he's in recovery of the attack, that's when you gotta pull out your shots and everything. And like I'm kind of handicapping myself in this fight too, because like I'm using handgun and I'm just trying to take him out with like handgun and stuff like everything, and maybe that was part of the reason why that fight was just as annoying as possible. But like I just like it was between that and then having to run around and like avoid all the other obstacles that's taking place, because he's moving around all over the place and like obstacles are being created and stuff like that. It was just like it was just like a lot to handle at that point.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of cheap shots that boss fight makes, especially like where it's a very dynamic fight, which I appreciated.
Yes.
Considering the original fight is very stationary. But like that created new problems in the sense that Salazar will drop like these little blops, like acid blops, all over the map, and it's random where they fall. And like while you're running around, like while you're moving, because you constantly have to be moving in this fight, it's very possible that because of the camera, you just don't see the blop and you run like right into it. And like you always kind of have to keep the camera trained on Salazar so you know where he is, because this dude is fucking like zooming. He is fucking
zooming
everywhere.
Yep.
And like the acid spray does so much damage to either you or your body armor that like you have to know when that's coming. So that compounded, I can see how that fight's very frustrating.
Yeah.
I definitely died like quite a few times on that fight, and it didn't take me like that long to finally get the hang of it, especially since like I started going for cheap shots with like the rifle. Like when he was across the stage, I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna shoot you in the head.
Yeah. So
because like you do try to conserve as much ammo as you can, but you can't let that fight drag on. Like I feel like there's too much going on that it just will snowball out of control real fast.
It will, and like also like at the beginning when he's just standing there, I literally pulled out the Magnum at one point and just was like, all right, I'm firing 3 shots of Magnum at you since you're just standing right here, because I was like that frustrated and irritated with it, and then what makes it even more like irritating was a friend of mine was telling me about this fight, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a way you could cheese them out. And
no, I know that.
Yeah, and you actually are hinted at this with a particular side quest that you do in the game. So like you put those together, and then like you do this specific thing. He will actually stop dead in his tracks, and then you cheese him out. And I'm like, I'm so mad that that's all I had to do to avoid this entire frustration of this boss fight. But yeah, I hated that fight with a passion. I thought it was like kind of goofy how they did it and everything. And I think, while like I said, I understand why they wanted to change it up and why they wanted to make that, you know, more dynamic, as you like to say. But given how like everything that you have to do, where you're having to constantly move the camera around and make sure you're not running into stuff, because you're right, the acid stuff will absolutely destroy you if you are like keep running into it. And like there are times where like you may not see it because you're trying to pan the camera around to keep track of where Salazar is, and you just accidentally back into it or something like that, and then you're dying. You're like, oh my god, it's so frustrating.
Yep. Yeah, that fight is definitely, I can see that frustrating a lot of people.
Yeah.
All in all, like again, I do have to fall back on it's Resident Evil 4. The game's still good from like start to finish. The island still feels like super out of place.
Yes. Yeah.
Still not like the biggest fan of the island. Again, like my biggest issue with the remake is like, because you don't have like these cutscenes with like Sadler and Ada, and like if you go back and watch like a let's play of the original Resident Evil 4, there's a lot of like conversations happening on like Leon's like little video comm between like him and Hunnigan, or him and Sadler, or him and Ada, and like there's a lot more interaction, whereas like in the remake, Leon's a lot more isolated. Now granted, you do have a couple more segments where like you're accompanied by Luis, but it feels like the narrative isn't as whole there, which, okay, I don't know how many people are really playing Resident Evil 4 for the story, but like I feel like it's worth pointing out because I enjoyed the original Resident Evil 4 story. It's campy, it's corny, but I still like really enjoyed it. Yeah, and like I can't help but feel like some of that is lost in the remake.
So I think that decision was intentional for what they did, for how they did that, because I think they wanted to create more of that isolated feel with Leon, and that's why there wasn't as much as that and everything, which I kind of was okay with. I definitely understand your, the misinteracting, right? As far as like seeing some other scenes and stuff like that. But I feel like that was intentional for them to try to make the atmosphere in a sense more intense in that regard. because Leon is basically out there by himself trying to complete his mission while dealing with all this other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was a decision for them to just be like, hey, how can we make this more extreme feeling and make this feel like an almost impossible thing for Leon to do? And that was probably why they maybe went that route into making him feel like he is definitely more isolated in that regard. There was, while saying all that, I do like what they did with Luis. I'm glad we got more of Luis Serra in this. Because he felt like an actual character now. Like he's actually, involved with things, and you learn more about his background and learn, what he was and everything. And like seeing the extra cut scenes with him and like his involvement with all this and everything. It made it seem like yes, he's part of this thing somehow, some way, which makes it like I said, it made it more like just more, and having him more involved just for me made it more complete with his character.
Yeah, I think giving Luis additional screen time is good. I'm not a fan of his new how he exits stage right in this game. I think he goes out like a chump as opposed to the original game, but that's my personal opinion. It's
kind of similar in a sense, but I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier in regards to Sadler, where Sadler is definitely more behind the scenes. Like he's more of the mastermind, the manipulator. So he's not as forefront as the original game, because he's literally just hanging out, chilling in the back and letting everything just happen in front of him.
Yeah, pretty much. Which again, that may be a divisive point. It may not be. I may be in the minority here, but I can't help but feel a little disappointed.
Well, it just depends on how do you like your cult leaders, Drew? Do you like them behind the scenes, or do you like them face forward and everything?
I mean, if we're
how do you prefer your cult leaders?
I need them straight up Baptist, in my face and
Gotcha. We learned something new. It's kind of funny. A lot of what you're saying and a lot of your feelings towards this and everything, I actually agree with. Which I thought that I felt like you would have had your own gripes with it and everything, which there are some that you kind of do, but for the most part, I'm in agreement as far as RE4 and what my experience was with it. As soon as I finished my playthrough of RE4, I just was like, okay, well, that was RE4. There really wasn't a sense of, oh wow, what an amazing game or anything like that. My first time playing RE4, it was just kind of yeah, this is what I played. This is RE4 with just a fresh coat of paint on some different aspects of how the game is. And I wonder, and I think part of that too is I get why they did RE4 remake, and obviously, with RE2 remake and even RE3 remake, it was just made sense of RE4 remake being a thing. But at the same time, I'm kind of the game really didn't need it. And it's been it's literally Capcom's version of Skyrim. This game has been ported so many times over so many years, over so many different consoles and platforms and everything, and it's just it really wasn't needed. It was already there, and then yes, even though they did make some gameplay aspects better in this game, I love doing the parries with the knife and stuff.
Yep.
But even then, a lot of the core gameplay for RE4 still kind of works for today.
Yep.
So like,
I mean, that just goes to show like how pivotal like RE4 was in the development of the third person shooter genre.
right?
Like,
Yeah,
it set the baseline for like what modern third person shooters are, and it developed a lot of like, you know, the staples that we see today. So it's only natural that its remake is going to be very similar to the original, just with a lot more polish.
Exactly.
And I can appreciate that.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm like,
New Wesker sucks, by the way.
yeah, I'll be honest, I miss DC Douglas being the voice of Wesker. I really do.
I mean, I'm actually disappointed with a lot of the voice casts in this game outside of Ashley. I think Ashley was an overall improvement. I will say that.
You know what? Yes, Ashley was indeed the biggest improvement of RE4 remake. That I will definitely agree with you on. She was definitely a much better character. Was not nearly as annoying as she was in like the original RE4. This Ashley was actually kind of cool in some spots and everything. I actually liked her. Definitely probably the best glow up in the game was remake Ashley.
Yeah. But for me, like a lot of the voice cast just wasn't hitting the same. Like the Merchant, Wesker, Ada's fine. Like Ada actually gets a lot of hate online, and I don't understand why.
I don't understand it either. I thought she actually portrayed Ada's personality incredibly well.
Yeah.
So like I don't get the hate at all for Ada's voice actress.
Yeah, me either. Krauser was whatever. Like Krauser's whole thing is he feels so generic, disgruntled American soldier.
Yes.
That's what I really didn't like about him.
Yes.
And like he that comes with the voice to boot. Like even if you've never heard Krauser before, like in the remake, you've heard him before. I promise you.
Yes.
I fucking promise you.
Yep.
Luis was fine. Leon was fine. Ashley was fine. Salazar was pretty good. But yeah, for the most part, like, I don't know. It just, a lot of the voice actors felt like they weren't into it. And like, if you go and watch the original RE4, you can tell that these VAs are fucking loving this shit. They're eating it up. And like, they're like, DC Douglas performs Wesker to a fucking T. Like, he is absolutely here for total global saturation.
Yeah.
Love it. And actually, I will say this. Wesker isn't voiced by DC Douglas in RE4.
He's not. No.
I did find that out later on. But I'm just saying, whoever they got Wesker for RE4 was good. And, like, this new one I'm not feeling.
Yeah. But like I said, playing RE5 and everything and seeing how DC Douglas portrayed Wesker, and, like, that's the way I grew up with it. Like, to me, that's always going to be the Wesker, is DC Douglas's version of it. But, yeah. Maybe those voice actors feel the same way. They're like, why are we voicing these lines? This game doesn't need a remake. Remake Code Veronica instead. But
yes, please.
That's still my most requested Resident Evil to be remade is Code Veronica. Please give me a Code Veronica remake.
First Resident Evil game I ever played.
Yeah, so
I have a lot of nostalgia for that game.
I've actually never played Code Veronica. I would also like a remake.
Oh, you believe me, if you get a chance to play OG Code Veronica, do it. It's cheesy as hell. It's goofy as hell, but my God, it's fun.
Also very easy to soft lock yourself, so
yes,
be very careful.
Yes, yeah,
nice.
Be very careful. Yes,
incredible. I had to start that game over like 4 times when I first played that game.
But yeah, I'm in the same boat with a lot of the things you were saying. As far as RE4 remake goes, now I'm not saying it's not a bad game. I think it's a very good game. I think it's a very solid game.
It's very good.
But like, you'll know exactly what you're getting into by playing RE4 remake, especially if you dumped a lot of time
Yeah, if you
into
played
RE4.
if you played RE4 again, this game ain't doing anything new. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And if you didn't like the original RE4, this is probably not going to win you over either.
No.
But also, you're just wrong.
Agreed.
Damn.
Mercenaries mode, though, is fun.
I actually haven't played it. I saw that Wesker wasn't playable, and I was real big sad.
Yeah, they're probably going to release Wesker and Ada later. But they did drop Mercenaries mode, and I did go into that. The playable characters are Leon, Luis, Krauser, and Hunk.
Yep.
Krauser is OP as hell. Because he's got his explosive arrow, he's got the submachine gun, and his mayhem mode, he goes into his mutated state. And he's just an immovable
I'm sure
tank.
he did that in the original, too.
Yeah, but like, I got the ultimate S plus rank with him on one of the stages because I killed every enemy within the time frame.
Nice.
So yeah, he's really strong, and like it's kind of cool what they did with all the characters. Like Leon's the like well balanced character. Luis, he's good, like he's good with a handgun and everything, but his melee attacks suck and everything. And his mayhem thing that he does when you fill up his gauge is that he literally drops a thing of dynamite and that's it. Like this big thing of dynamite, he just lays on the ground. You run away from it, and anything that is like on the screen at that point, the dynamite takes care of it all. So like he's pretty funny. Hunk, his thing is where if you activate, he has infinite ammo with his machine gun. But my boy Hunk do be snapping necks though. Like his melee attack, he just snaps necks, and it's pretty funny. Like on the chainsaw dudes, so like you stun them and everything, he just snaps their neck and they're done. I'm like, okay, Hunk, I see you. You know, so
Hunk said enough is enough.
Yeah, but I definitely like what they did. Mercenaries mode is definitely fun, which kind of like made it to where like, okay, this is a little more fun now with Mercenaries mode being introduced and stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same way as far as a lot of what you say into with RE4. A lot of the feelings are very similar, so there's not really much for me to elaborate on when it comes to the rest of RE4 Remake.
Gotcha. Yeah, I pretty much said my piece. Like it's RE4. I think I like some things the original does better, but I think the gameplay of the remake is like 100% 10 out of 10.
Yes.
So I think ultimately that's where my feelings on RE4 remake land. So moving on from that, after beating RE4, I started another Metroidvania called 9 Years from Shadow, which recently came out about a week and a half ago. Rob, I believe you encountered this game at PAX, right?
I did. Yep.
I've been eyeing this game for a while. It is a beautifully crafted pixel art Metroidvania that, you know, I saw the trailers for and I'm like, this game looks fantastic. And I've got to say, I am not feeling this game at all.
That's how you know there's a problem. Because this is like, you look at this game and you're like, this is the most Drew-ass video game to ever Drew.
It is. It is. I don't know if part of it is like just recently like fresh coming off of Vernal Edge and Vernal Edge being so good. But like ultimately, like what it comes down to is like, so like don't get it twisted. This game is absolutely gorgeous. Like this pixel art is chef's kiss, like fucking beautiful. The problem is like that's 90% of what I like about the game. Now I've only put in about like 2-3 hours, but like I've checked a couple reviews just to like kind of see like where it goes, and like I've explored quite a few areas. I've gotten a few power-ups, and like a lot of the game is hinged around this health mechanic, and I feel like it trivializes the entire game to the point to where it leaves me very uninterested.
What's the health mechanic?
Well, before I get into that, I want to do a breakdown of the game where you are playing protagonist Europa, who is this orphaned warrior who has been dealing with this. This land has been cursed for several years, and it's all coming from this tower. And Europa decides, hey, everything around me is awful and dying. I lost my parents. All this. I'm going to try and tackle this tower and either defeat this curse or die trying. And so you end up in this tower, and like as you're exploring this tower, everything's like black and white, and like that's apparently part of the lore is like color was drained from the world. And so you go through like this initial starting segment, right? And like you fight a couple enemies, and then you fight like this boss who completely just wrecks the shit out of you. After getting wrecked, it looks like Europa's about to die, and she's rescued by this teddy bear spirit called Taziwi. And Taziwi returns color to the world of the tower, or the castle, or whatever it's called, and like joins Europa. And like Taziwi is that fucker is the whole problem with this game that I've encountered.
It's always the bear
so
characters.
So basically, once you encounter this character and he joins Europa, that introduces the game's health mechanic, which is so Europa herself has like 2 hearts, and the second she loses 2 hearts, she dies. Now, you might think, well, that's pretty brutal, right? You get hit twice, you die. Okay, that's not all there is. So with Tsui, you have this light bar, which you can use to, as you take damage, it dwindles down this light bar. And then once the light bar is all the way gone, then if Europa takes another hit, she'll lose a heart. And then once she loses 2 hearts, she dies. And so there's this dynamic between the light bar where like, you also use this light bar to have Taziwi throw out light projectiles to damage certain enemies, and it can damage like any enemy, but there are specific enemies that can only be hit by these light projectiles, right? So because of that, the game has to give you a way to recharge this light mechanic, because if you didn't, you would encounter enemies that you wouldn't be able to like hurt. So whenever this light gauge is empty, there are 2 ways you can do it. The first is you can have Europa sing a lullaby in which she like hugs Taziwi and like recharges it by like 3/4. Or at a certain point in the game, like after you've expended all the entire light gauge, there's like a little like quick time reload, kind of like Bayonetta, maybe? I feel like there's a game, like some kind of action game that has like a quick reload, and like so long as you get it in like this little green bar, it just refills your bar completely and you just keep going.
I mean, Gears of War was the pioneer of that, of the active reload system.
Oh, maybe that's Gears of War. But yeah, it has like an active reload system, right? And so like because of this, you can just never die. And like the enemies in the game are never aggressive enough for this to ever really become a problem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see.
So like the enemy design in this game is really, really basic. Like they don't really do like they're there. It's kind of like the opposite problem of Vernal Edge, where like I remember having a complaint about Vernal Edge where like combat felt so good, but enemies were tied to these select like battle rooms. Mm-hmm. Whereas in 9 years, enemies are everywhere. Like 9 years definitely takes a lot more from Symphony of the Night than something like Vernal Edge does. Like it is a lot closer to Symphony of the Night than a lot of Metroidvanias I've played. And like as you're exploring areas, like enemies are littered all over. The problem is none of these enemies ever feel like a threat, and this includes bosses. Like I've done like 5 to 6 boss battles, and like they're just very rinse repeat with huge openings for me to like even if I did take a hit, I can just recharge my light bar.
That's not a good feeling. Like at the very least, you want to have strong boss encounters.
Yep. Yep. And the bosses I've encountered thus far have just not been like, I died once accidentally because I was trying to do some platforming and I ran into some spikes and I didn't realize my light bar was empty. But like, that's the other thing. It's like, there are some like platforming segments in the game, but they pale in comparison to like what Vernal Edge was asking me to do. They feel very uninspired, very like the level design feels very uninspired. Actually, I think that's the best word I can think of. Is the areas I've encountered, everything looks very samey. The enemy designs look very samey. I don't know, it is not catching me at all, which is very disappointing because like I look at these sprites and I'm like, these sprites are fucking gorgeous. But like everything else about the game, I'm just like, nothing about it makes me want to keep playing. And like I've gotten like 2 to 3 power-ups and none of them are really doing anything interesting. Like combat feels so dull. Like the enemies are not interesting to fight. They are somewhat damage spongy for no reason. And so like that slows down like your exploration pace because now you have to wail on this big thing that's not even really giving you a challenge. It's just in your way. So you have to wail down on it until it dies. And then you move forward until you run into the next one. And so like all of this coming together. And then even then, if you wanted to, you don't even need to actually attack it. You can stand across the screen and shoot light balls at it. And then once you run out, you just recharge and keep shooting light balls at it.
Sounds like you need to get a refund on Steam.
like I really wanted to like this, but the more I played it, I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah,
sometimes
none
they
of
don't
this
hit.
Feels good.
That's unfortunate.
Very.
Yeah, like
really, really unfortunate.
It's really disappointing, especially coming from Vernal Edge, where like I don't know if I really wasn't expecting a lot out of Vernal Edge, but that shit fucking knocked it out the park for me. Like I love that game. That game is like on the docket for game of the year for me almost. Right. Whereas like this game is just like, you look so good, but like it feels like there's no substance here.
You put all the money in the visuals. The game can look pretty, but still mechanically not play well.
There are a lot of games that are Metroidvania that do unfortunately fall in that group of. Wow, all the budget
to like move around and whatnot. Like jumping feels fine, moving feels fine.
But game design is a whole other thing, though. You know, like enemy design, boss design, like all that stuff is.
That's almost
usually.
That's almost as big of a draw.
Yeah, I agree.
And they don't always get that right, you know.
And like I've been playing like Metroidvania is like my genre, right? Like Rob said, this is the most Drew game. Like you watch the trailer, this is the most Drew game that has ever Drewed, ever. And like, I can't believe it's such a whiff for me.
Yeah, man.
So like, I think I'm gonna put it down. Maybe come back to it again. You know, maybe they might do some changes to it. I don't know. But I don't feel the urge to play it. Exploration does not feel very interesting.
Right.
Especially like, okay, you could make the argument that like a Castlevania, Metroidvania game, like, you know, combat isn't very like crazy in Symphony of the Night. Like you're just wailing on your sword with Alucard, but like you have all these different like sub weapons and spells and all these kinds of different things. And then like as you're exploring Dracula's castle, like every area feels radically different, and like enemy design in that game is really cool. There's some pretty sick boss fights in that game. Like, yeah, like 9 Years from Shadow just feels like it doesn't bring any of that to the table. It feels very aggressively fine is a good descriptor if I'm going to borrow something from Rob.
Aggressively fine.
Like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with 9 Years from Shadow outside of, like, just being a bit dull.
Yeah. That I mean, like, that doesn't necessarily surprise me, right? Given just, like, how many games in that genre get developed every day, right? Like it is definitely a genre that is seen a lot of releases.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that oftentimes they don't get right is what you're talking about, right? It's like these areas are necessarily not interesting to explore, or the boss fights aren't as interesting, or the combat is not as interesting. But the one thing that most of them tend to get right is usually the visuals, right? Because they're coming from a place of like that pixel art nostalgia, right? And that's kind of what they're going for, but they don't understand like the underlying game design that makes those games like really good. And that's usually the misstep for these games.
Yeah, and like there's one room in particular that I was exploring. So like Europa has these different armors that she can gain that give her like different powers. If you remember, like when I was talking about this game to you earlier, Rob, like it's based on elements, and I'm like, oh, this reminds me of a game idea I had back when I was like in game design class, and like I thought it was really cool. And so like I got the water armor. Like the first armor you unlock is like the lightning armor, and all that does is give you lightning damage. There is nothing cool about the lightning armor at all. And like you just have your basic like 3-hit attack and then like a strong attack, and then like there's nothing cool about the lightning armor at all other than it does lightning damage. So I got the water armor, which you unlock an ability to turn into a mermaid, which was cool. And then like you go into a room that's supposed to challenge you on your new mermaid powers, and it's literally like straight horizontal, like with spikes. It's like a straight horizontal, and then a straight vertical, and then a straight horizontal back, and a straight vertical, and then a straight horizontal. I'm like, that wasn't challenging. Like, yeah, there were spikes everywhere, and I'd get jacked up, but nothing about that was challenging. Nothing about that was interesting. But like, it looked very cookie cutter. Like I could see this being in like 10,000 Metroidvanias.
Yes.
Whereas, like, I think about Vernal Edge, where that game made me think I was playing Celeste a couple of the time. Like that, like it's weird because like Vernal Edge put so much thought and design into its combat, but it had like some legitimately satisfying platforming sections. And if anything, this is just turning into another reason why I love Vernal Edge so much, and why I cannot not recommend that game enough. That game is so good, and like this game really affirmed that, of like really pointing out what Vernal Edge did right versus what this game isn't doing right.
Right.
So I think I'm gonna put the game down. I'm gonna start Octopath 2 because it's time. I have a month. I have a literal month until Breath of the Wild 2 comes out. I can fucking do that. That is like the new plan is we are playing Octopath 2, and that shit's done by fucking May 12th, 2023.
Oh, what if I give you another Metroidvania to play?
Is it Have a Nice Death? Because that's another one that I want to check out.
No, but it's a wonderful one called Ori and the Blind Forest.
Oh, I do have that game.
You should play that game.
I've been meaning to. I'm looking right at it on the shelf.
I hope you get to that game one day. I would love to talk Ori and the Blind Forest.
One day.
Well, you speak very highly about that game and its design.
That is
so
probably like my favorite game in that genre.
Wait, which one's the first one?
Ori and the Blind Forest.
Which one's In the Will of the Wisps?
The second one.
Oh. I have the second one.
Oh. Well, you definitely don't start that. Massive spoiler warnings if you start that game.
Gotcha. Duly noted. I think I have the first one digitally on Switch. But yeah, no, I do intend to get to that. I do think I probably need to cool it on the Metroidvanias at the same time, because that is a genre, like as you said, millions of those are created every day. You can get very exhausted in that genre real fast.
In the time of this podcast, 9 more Metroidvanias have been introduced, at least.
That's 100%. Like you refresh Steam and more appear.
Another Metroidvania. Do you remember when I was talking about the Gestalt demo about how that game felt so good? Don't get any of that feelings from this game, which is wild. So. Fucking Gestalt, Vernal Edge, Metroidvania, video games. Passing the baton.
Passing the baton. Ryan,
Rob,
have you been doing anything else aside from Resident Evil?
Speaking of games that have been meant to start but never got around to starting until a couple nights ago, I finally started up the Ryza series.
Ooh.
I finally have started the first one, and so far I'm digging it. I'm only a couple hours in, but I definitely see what you meant by there's a lot of slice of life to it and everything.
Yep.
Which I think for me, at this point, is fine. I'm okay with like a more slice of life change of pace and just kind of chilling and relaxing to like a story of the game, you know? And it's been fun so far. I definitely like all the characters so far that's been introduced. I didn't realize that Ryza was as much of a firecracker as she is. And I think that's and I think that's like a big draw. Is like, okay, I see why this character is liked a lot amongst other things, and you can look up fan art to see that and everything. But yeah, she's actually thus far, like from what I'm playing, she seems like a really, really cool character. So I
love Ryza a lot. Like as a character, she's a very good protagonist.
Yes, and I think that's like a good draw with that and everything. So I'm enjoying it so far. I've definitely liked, some of the mechanics that's been introduced. I could tell like I can get lost with the whole alchemy, like crafting stuff and everything, because it just seems like you just throw a bunch of shit in the cauldron and there you go, you got something made.
That's it.
So
just throw some dirt, a couple of things of ore, and toss in I don't know, some tree bark, and then you have some armor.
You have the thing. Whatever that is.
Drugs.
Yes. You know? That's basically what I said. I was like, oh, so she's making drugs. Okay, gotcha. So, like, I've definitely enjoyed my time with it so far. I am kind of looking forward to see if the story does open up a little bit more, because it's more or less like an introduction to everything, and this is the intro of her life. So I'm kind of waiting for, like, when things start to kind of go awry, I guess is the best way to word it.
Ryza?
Oh my god!
Oh, there we go. Podcast title.
Okay, all right. I was just gonna say JSB hates Resident Evil, but Ryza is
Resident Evil 4 remake.
Resident Evil 4 remake goes Ryza. All right.
There we go.
We're cooking. We're cooking. We're throwing words into a cauldron.
Quality.
Yes. Let us cook. Literally.
Yeah.
So I've definitely liked what I'm going so far into it. I think I'm going to dive more into it tomorrow as well, since I got a day off and I kind of want to chill and relax a little bit. So I'll definitely probably play more of it tomorrow and probably put like a pretty good dent into the game itself, because I've heard it's like 40 hours or something like that, which I'm perfectly okay with. So I'll definitely be getting more of that. Combat, like, I played a couple battles and everything. Combat seems like it's pretty fun. Although, question, do you control the other characters?
No.
Okay, all right.
They are AI controlled. You can swap between them. So you can take point as other characters. And then I believe after a certain point, you are able to, like, issue commands if you want them to do a specific thing.
Gotcha.
Or at the very least, you can tell them to, like, hey, be aggressive, so then they just use all their skills or something.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
Primarily, you have a point character that you're working.
That you're just controlling the entire time. Okay. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to figure out. I didn't know if that was the case or not. But to complete the other side quest stuff, right? Do you have to control those characters as the point, or can you just have them do their thing and you can still?
You can just have them do their thing.
Gotcha, and you could still get your side quest stuff and everything. Cool. Okay, that was like kind of like the thing I was curious about and everything. So, all right. So that was that pretty much. The other game that I said I would talk about when I got back is a game that like I played to mess around with, and I forget what we were talking about. I think we were talking about Paranormal or Paranormal Site when you were talking about like there was different endings and stuff like that, and like different ways the game can end. And it made me immediately remember. I was like, oh yeah, I played Needy Streamer Overload. Oh
yes.
And I was like, that sounds vaguely familiar. As far as that goes, everything. And I was like, wait a minute, I never actually talked about this game and what this game actually is. So
please tell me about this game.
Yeah, so it is like a visual novel-esque game. Of course, you know, VTubers and things like that are kind of like a thing now, you know, like that's something that's been going around for a while. Although this isn't necessarily like a VTuber game, but you know, it's a girl who wants to be a big time streamer, basically. She, you know, you're basically acting as like a manager, like mod sort of for this character that is trying to become this big time streamer. And like it's interesting because like you can do basically whatever, but based off of like the suggestions and like the things you tell this character to do, has an effect on her psyche, has an effect on like her attributes. And it's kind of funny because like if you try to keep her incredibly like straight-laced, like if you're like if you like keep her from like not having like any bad mentals or anything like that, she just flat out quits streaming and goes on to be a doctor. So you end the game
she actually does something with her life, right?
Yeah. So oh, okay. Well, that's one way the game ends. If she leans too much on being a gamer and stuff like that, she'll quit streaming and just be on gaming.
All right.
If you have her do other lewd acts or whatever,
oh boy,
and way too much, she becomes a nympho and stops streaming.
Oh Jesus.
So like,
does she stop streaming or does she start streaming?
No, well, not the streaming that you're thinking of. It literally will end a game where she
the content. We're a PG podcast.
Hell no, we ain't.
When the fuck is that happening?
We have never been that.
I don't think we've ever had that fucking label.
But no, she gets addicted to the D, and and no more
Metamorphosis. Understood.
No more YouTube streaming. We'll leave it at that. Yep. So like it's you have to like have this weird balance of like not have her be too much on one side of things, because the game will just end and it will give you a different ending and stuff like that. And I think there are like some dark endings that happen too if you like if she has like really really bad mental. I have not gotten any of those. I've gotten the straight-laced and the nympho endings, and those were pretty damn funny. But I haven't gotten like the dark endings and stuff like that and everything. But yeah, it's like you have to have this balance of like her being okay, but also being a little fucked up at the same time. In order for her to like continue the streaming thing, and it's like through like 28 days, and like if you get it to one part of it, like of too much of it or anything like that, she'll end up stop streaming and the game is over and you get a different ending and stuff like that. So it's kind of like an interesting little visual novel that they do anything. Soundtrack in the game is great. That's like the biggest selling point of this game. With not just being like a pixel art game and stuff like that and everything, but its soundtrack is amazing. It's like a very good 8-bit like soundtrack that's really really catchy.
Not expecting that.
Yeah, it's got a really really good soundtrack. In fact, one of the songs got like made into an actual song that's also in Muse Dash. And there's even
that's collab.
Yep, and there's actually going to be another Needy Streamer Overload collab with Muse Dash coming soon as well. So like, so the soundtrack is actually really, really good. So like, if you like the music and stuff like that, I think it's pretty good. And like, it's so like the other aspect is when she's streaming, right, and you're modding her chat and everything, you have the option of selecting certain comments and stuff like that she'll read at the end of the stream and everything. And like, depending on like which comments you select and everything, she gets some very funny interactions and stuff like that and everything.
You got super chats as well?
Yes.
Dang.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So you mod the chat as she's doing her stream and everything. And there were some streams that I kind of selected where it led to some extra hilarity. One of them involved her bouncing on an exercise ball. That's all I'm going to leave it at.
Of course. Of course. This is all I'm visualizing right now is just hot tub streams on Twitch.
Yes.
Yes. The IRL tag on Twitch.
Yes.
And how corrupt it has gotten.
Yes.
That is where my mind is going.
Yes. COVID has done some shit. Although I think that was kind of partially happening pre-COVID too.
It was definitely pre-COVID as well.
Yeah.
But
so
there's been an explosion.
Yeah, but like I said, definitely it's definitely a game worth checking out. It's definitely pretty interesting, and it kind of like, especially for someone that's tried streaming or stuff like that. It's kind of like, wow, there's a lot of okay. Like there's some relatable stuff in there, even though this is obviously based off a female streamer, basically. But like,
right,
it's still kind of like, wow, this is a lot relatable because I see a lot of this stuff happening too. So, but yeah, it's definitely a unique game to check out too. So,
it was one that's been on my wish list for a while.
Yeah.
And I haven't pulled the trigger on it, but I definitely want to get to it at some point.
It's definitely worth it. Especially like, well, I think the price on it's pretty cheap too. I think it's like
$15.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. But yeah, it's rated like overwhelmingly positive. Like it's a really like, it's definitely recommended as far as like games to play and stuff.
I've only heard good things. Like, it's definitely like rated well on Steam, but also from the people that I know that have played it, have all come back with like positive things to say about it.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good, pretty funny, like enjoyable experience. Well, like I said, I never accessed like any of the dark stuff though, so like I can't speak on that. But but like, yeah, the actual like aspect of the game and stuff like that, everything is a very unique premise. So
yeah.
But that's pretty much it as far as games that I've played and stuff like that. I've gotten back into drawing again. Made a couple new art pieces with the original character I made, which now has a name. Name's Rhea. So if you guys want to check out any of that, you can just go on my Twitter account, RCB_draws, to see that and everything. I've actually been elaborating more on her story and who she is and stuff like that, and what makes her and everything too. And so you can check that out. And there's one other thing I did too. There was the trend that was going on with the Barbie movie, where like you make the Barbie poster, and I did that with my one of my drawings and everything, and I was just like, why did this turn out like as good as it did? I'm surprised about this. So yeah, that's also up there as well, so you can check it out.
Cool. Good deal. Hell yeah. My section will be pretty short. Though I play it a lot, it's just I haven't put a lot of time into stuff, if that makes sense. Like I've touched a bunch of different titles, but haven't really sat down with a bunch of titles.
Right, yeah.
So like I started Atelier Ryza 3. Speaking of Ryza.
Yeah.
That is on my rotation of games to play. So I'm probably like 2-3 hours into it. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot. The I mentioned it a little bit last week, but like the visual fidelity of that game is way higher than I ever thought it was going to be. Like that game is gorgeous. They did a really great
Ryza
job
budget got big all of a sudden.
Ryza budget got huge, man. It's also interesting to see like the changes in the character models. Like the redesigns for the characters this time around aren't as drastic as I wanted them to be, because like going from 1 to 2, there's like a pretty massive shift in like how these characters look, and that's also plays a part of, as far as like the time skip that occurs between 1 and 2. But the time skip between 2 and 3 isn't nearly as large, and I wish like the character designs were a little bit more drastically changed, but there are some really cool little details about them. So like Ryza herself, I feel like has gotten like a little taller. You can see on her model like she's getting older, which I really appreciate. That's something I always like in games and in anime, right? Is like this you can see the passage of time, right? And that is something that's been very consistent throughout Ryza 1, 2, and 3. So it's like she looks in for the most part acts like more of an adult now, because when you, as you're playing through Ryza 1, she is only like 16, like 15, 16 years old, and you could tell she's a firecracker little brat, right? And sometimes you know, she feels like she knows everything. But it's really cool to see like where these characters are now versus where they started. And every time I'm reacquainted with a new character, it is just like I feel like my child has come home, and it gives me this really good feeling. I haven't gotten too deep into like what the overall story is going to be, or like what the major conflict will be, right? Like we're getting some semblance of some trouble brewing on Ryza's island, but don't really know how interesting that stuff will be, because in my opinion, for all of the Ryza games, the overall world conflict is never really that interesting. I know, as you were saying, Ryan, you're waiting for like things to sort of pop off in a way, or things to escalate at least a little bit. Yeah. And in my opinion, they really don't escalate to any sort of like alarming level, right? It's like, yeah, there is a conflict that needs to be resolved. But it's kind of like just typical anime stuff. It's like I feel like it's not very interesting. Like the characters themselves are far more interesting than the problem that they're facing.
Sure. Okay. And Good to know.
Yeah, yeah. So don't feel like you're waiting for like a very specific moment or anything. Just enjoy this comfy ride that you're on.
The moment is Ryza forgot her toast. That's
there you go. There you go. So I'm just looking for more character stuff in this game, and it seems like so far it's giving me that. One character in particular, like I won't mention them because it is kind of spoilery, especially from coming off of like Ryza 1. But one character specifically, I'm really proud of where they are now versus where they started. It is very much a situation of like Drew. Remember how much shit we was talking about like Machias?
Yep.
Yeah, it's very much like that scenario of like at this point in the game, this character is like my fucking child. I hated them at first, and now I am behind them 110%. I want nothing but smiles for this character, and like the way that they're acknowledging this character's growth, and even the character themselves, in their like uncertainty of like like you can tell the character is struggling themselves of like, do they fit in? Have they grown enough to where like other characters forgive them for like the things that they have done? Like there's some stuff there with this character that I'm like, I really like what they're pushing. And yeah, Rise 3 is great. I highly recommend going through that series. If people haven't yet, or if you've played through 1 and 2 and you haven't started 3, highly recommend starting 3. It's just as good as the rest of them. alchemy and like the battle system hasn't changed like dramatically. Like a lot of that stuff still plays out very much the same, just like newer animations, which all look very pretty. So it's more Ryza as usual, and that's really all I want out of it. I have gone back to playing Final Fantasy IV. So for a brief period, my controller from my PC broke, so I wasn't able to play like a lot of games on my PC that wasn't very mouse and keyboard friendly, which is kind of like 90% of my games.
Yeah, as I say, that your entire Steam library, basically.
Basically, right? So I'm going through like stuff that I could just kind of play on the Steam Deck until I got a replacement controller yesterday. And I'm like, what can I go back to? What do I need to finish? Just like, taking a tally of like what's in my backlog that I want to make a priority. And I'm like, I should get back to playing through Final Fantasy, especially the Pixel remasters are getting released on console pretty soon here. And I'm like, you know what? Let me get back on that wagon. So I am making my way through Final Fantasy IV. It is a game that I know for some people it is their favorite. It is one of those games where like this is some people's favorite Final Fantasy, right? It's like 4, 6, 9, or like in 7 are like the ones, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple others you can probably skirt in there, but those are like the main ones that people talk about when you think of Final Fantasy. 4 for me has never like hit particularly hard. I'm not a big fan of Cecil, to be honest.
Not a big fan of the fucking moon. I have a very big love-hate relationship with that game.
Oh, really?
So I have played Final Fantasy IV multiple times, and I love that game.
Maybe twice. And I have not played it. Oh.
I've never beaten it.
Oh.
I love that game. Mm-hmm. Until it sends me to the moon, and I'm just like, this game is fucking stupid, and then I turn it off.
Damn. What do you got against the moon?
I hate the moon segment so much.
Jesus.
Because it's so dumb.
Oh.
It's so dumb.
You heard it here first. Final Fantasy IV killed Drew's dog. I didn't know you felt that way.
And this is the beginning of Drew's John Wick arc.
I know, right?
Well, we're gonna try again. Like my pixel collection's on its way. It'll be here. We'll try again.
We will try again. I'm curious. Drew's gonna have stronger thoughts than I do, so I'm more curious about his Final Fantasy retrospective opinions than mine. I'm curious to see where you'll land when you get back to the moon portion of that game. I have not made it there in this particular playthrough just yet, but I was never bothered by it.
Breaking news: Drew hates NASA.
Drew hates NASA.
So fucking dumb.
I mean, JRPGs, like, especially at that time, are dumb.
I mean,
if I've learned anything, some of these games are just dumb, and you just accept for what it is.
As someone who has shilled Legend of Dragoon as much as I have and everything, I can confirm this.
Yeah.
There's some goofy stuff in that game, but like God, I love that game.
Right? So yeah, I just got to the port where I got my airship, so I'm going around doing some collecting stuff. Because also as part of my replays of these games and going through Pixel remasters, like I intend to get all of the achievements in all of these games. So I'll make sure I'm getting all the treasure chests, all the hidden items, filling out the bestiary, make sure I do everything possible. So this way, when I come out at the end of this game, I have like a very well-informed like opinion of this video game. Right, that's what I want to give each of these titles. And I'm enjoying 4. Like it's Cecil aside.
Informed opinion. Going to the moon's fucking stupid.
Indeed, moon is dumb. Yeah, that's about it. Like I enjoy the game. Again, Cecil is kind of whatever to me, but I'm not a big fan of like knight characters in general. For a lot of times, like it's usually an exception. Here or there. So like the whole angle of like Dark Knight, Paladin, and his character arc, I'm just like, Sure.
Good for you.
Good for you, friend.
You're a knight. Good for you.
Good for you. I think I still enjoy like the conflict of two more. Like the idea of war. In nations getting bombed and destroyed, I felt impacted me more out of 2 than everything I've played post that. Like the escalation in 4 happens like immediately to a point where it feels like, I don't know, I don't really have any feelings towards these nations that are being destroyed as we go through this. Like like I'm not forming any sort of attachment to a lot of what's happening. And I find that very interesting as I play through it. But it's good stuff. I like Rydia. I like a lot of the other cast members. The twins are great. So yeah, I'll update y'all when I finish that game. I'm going to try to finish it this week. I'm going to try to just like plow through it. These games are not very long. So as long as I knock out
even shorter if you stop when you get to the moon.
Indeed. Then I can't get all the achievements. So that would defeat the purpose. I hope you enjoy the game, Drew. I hope you turn a corner on it. I feel like you won't. These are some pretty strong moon feelings, so I feel like you might end up just dropping it again once you get to the fucking moon. But I hope it turns a corner. I hope you're able to go into it and find some enjoyment there. What else have I been playing?
Enjoy your inner moon.
Enjoy my inner moon. There was one more thing that I was going to mention, and I'm back on Hi-Fi Rush. Now that I have a new controller, I can get back to playing through Hi-Fi Rush.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I'm about halfway through that game. That game is still fan-fucking-tastic. I still stand by my statement that I think that is the best action game to ever release. And that's probably more like a Rob thing. But I do think that game fires on all cylinders in a way that no other action game that I've played really has.
It's got rhythm game elements, so yes.
And the way it leans into that is like incredible. Like it is very easy to create like a rhythm based thing and it just falls apart. Like you have to have a killer soundtrack. You have to make sure all the mechanics are right. You have to make sure like the enemy encounters like play with that whole system appropriately. Like there's a lot of ways that this game could break or just like fall apart or not be up to par, but every encounter I get into, every new enemy type that gets introduced, every new ability that unlocks, and just like seeing how all of these mechanics work in tandem with one another. The soundtrack alone, both the original stuff and the licensed music that they have in there is just like all 10 out of 10. It's just it's amazing. The things that game does, and on top of having a fantastic cast. Like the entire cast of that game is amazing. So I'm looking forward to getting to the end of that game and rolling credits on it. Even though I know there's a lot of post game stuff too. Like there's a lot of unlockables in that game as well. That warrants like replayability. So yeah, that's really what I have been doing. Still grinding out Memento Mori every single day. This is the longest I've ever stuck with a mobile game.
Same.
Yeah.
I'm actually about ready to boot up again just to claim my my awards from being AFK. Yeah. I'm definitely. I think I'm right there with you as far as like mobile games go. Like, this is probably the one that I really like the most, just because of like a lot of just like the user friendliness with it and stuff like that. Like it's like it's not a big grind that I got to go through on a regular basis. Incredibly low commitment, and it gives you like just enough of a hit to where like, okay, I got what I needed out of this experience, and call it a day until the next day. Yep. I still am trying to get another Florence so I can make her limited because that's the only one I haven't been able to get yet. I keep missing. I keep missing out on her. But I did take your advice on trying to get Merlin up there though. I didn't realize Merlin was that wild as far as a support character goes.
Merlin and Mimi. Mimi's I didn't realize how cracked Mimi was until fairly recently. So Mimi is this cat girl. I think she's Earth Element, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
She has a passive where as soon as the fight begins, she marks a second character that has I want to say the highest defense on the opponent's team. But regardless, she marks the character that's on the opponent's team. She links two characters together, and if you attack one character, it also deals damage to this character that's linked to them.
Oh wow!
So you think when you have Florence and Cordy busting out crits opening style, you're killing two characters at once.
Oh wow! I need to get Mimi in the mix then too.
Yeah, I highly recommend having right now I think I'm running I have Merlin, Florence, Cordy, Mimi, and Merlin, Florence, Cordy, Mimi. There's one more in there that I can't remember. But that's basically the shell, right?
I mean, 80% of your shell is pretty good.
Yeah.
Seeing as a 5-character party, you got 80% of it.
It's right there. It's right there. So yeah. Cool game out of 10. Continues to be cool. I'm trying to get this newest character in my party. She is evading me, and I only have 4 days left.
Yeah, I kind of gave up on that.
I can't. I'm the collector in me. I need the character.
I'm more or less I need to get the dupes to level them up or uncap them basically. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
That's the smart thing to do. You are doing the smart thing. I am doing the dumb thing. Because a lot of the new characters that get introduced, truthfully, are not very good.
No.
The last one, Ophelia, was really, really good. But every new character since the beginning, since Fortina, every character after Fortina has not been worth leveling up at all.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm just doing it for a collector's sake. I have to get the new character, and then I'll start focusing on dupes until the new character gets announced.
But I mean, when the Fortina banner was back, I was trying to get dupes of her though, because I was that was a character I was trying to level up and everything too.
Smart man. Again, you're doing the smart thing. Keep doing the smart thing.
I will do the smart thing for both of us.
Thank you. That's all I could ask for.
Gotcha. We gotcha.
But with that, that's really been it. I think we have a podcast here. We can wrap it up. Get out of here. Let's begin the sign-offs. Ryan, sign us off.
Yeah. Once again, guys, you can follow me on Twitter, RCB_draws. It's mainly a account where I post all my artwork. It is both safe for work and not safe for work, so just be cognizant of that. But yeah, you can see some of my latest artwork, which I'll be honest, I've been pretty happy with the quality of work I've been putting out with that. So yeah, so there's that. I also did reopen commissions if anyone's interested in that too. So that's pretty much the only thing I'll promote. It's just my Twitter account, RCB_draws. Check it out.
Cool. Drew?
You can find me on Twitter at JSB Totally Drew, tweeting out my hot video game opinions.
Hot takes. Hot take, Drew. You can find me on Twitter at ZenosukeZNOSUKE, where I retweet art. I talk about video games sometimes. I talk about anime sometimes. Sometimes I do things. And sometimes I don't. You can also follow us at Jack Savage Base on Twitter for any updates on everything that we do, both from a GameCast standpoint, from the anime cast standpoint, everything that goes up. You'll be updated through that account. We do have a YouTube page as well, where everything is going up currently. I know I wanted to put up a lot of the old podcast episodes too. At some point that's going to happen, but that's like a year-long project that I'm going to undertake.
Yeah, that's going to take you a minute.
You know, and then obviously all of the audio stuff is on all the streaming networks. So definitely like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. We're going to have some non-podcast content coming up pretty soon. I know for the anime side of things, Asher hooked up with the Nakama Anime Bar and recorded some footage of a sake tasting test that they had there. That was pretty cool. So I think that's going to go up on the channel. And then we'll probably figure out some cool other group activities for all of us to do, both on the game side and anime side, to just do more stuff over there. So stay tuned for that stuff. And with that... And with that, let's get out of here. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for listening. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Nighty night, nights.
I'm glad that was in there, by the way. Anyway, go play Vernal Edge. The game's amazing. Bye.